Hello and welcome, everyone. Close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath, and let the gentle quiet of the night settle around you. Allow the noise of the modern world to fade away, step by step, leaving only the calm, rhythmic rise and fall of your breathing. Welcome to Sleepy Space Stories. If you enjoy unwinding with these peaceful journeys through time, please take a soft moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to join our nightly voyages. Now, sink comfortably into your space, let go of the day, and let us begin our journey back to the very beginning, to Chapter 1, Cliffs Above the Inland Sea. Imagine taking a slow, quiet breath in and letting it out with a long, effortless sigh. Allow the weight of the day to fall away from your shoulders, resting heavily into the mattress beneath you. As your breathing settles into a steady, peaceful rhythm, let your mind drift back through the fog of time, past the cities, past the green forests, past the mountains, deep into an era so ancient that the very shape of the earth was different from the world you know tonight. Eons ago, in the twilight of the Cretaceous period, there was no sound of engine or highway, no lights cast against the darkness of the sky. There was only the immense, untamed expanse of a wild world bathed in the warm, pale light of a setting sun. Where the heart of North America rests today, where prairie winds now rustle through fields of golden wheat, there was once a vast, shimmering ocean. It was the Western Interior Seaway, a warm, shallow, magnificent body of water that cut through the continent from the frozen waters of the far north all the way down to the tropical currents of the southern Gulf. Picture yourself suspended softly above the western shoreline of this primordial sea. The air here is soft and heavy, smelling richly of salt, wet limestone, and the sun-warmed spray of seawater. A mild, steady breeze rolls across the water, carrying with it the eternal rhythm of the tide, a slow, rhythmic hush, 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 as soft turquoise waves dissolve into delicate white foam against the base of towering cliffs. These cliffs rise high above the sea, carved out of pure white chalk. Built over millions of years from the microscopic shells of ancient ocean life, the chalk walls shine with a gentle, milky luminosity under the afternoon sky. They curve gracefully along the coastline for miles, broken into ledges, alcoves, and high sheltered terraces that overlook the infinite horizon. On these high ledges, bathed in the lingering warmth of the sun, thousands of creatures have made their home. They are not birds, though they belong to the sky. They are Pteranodon, the legendary giant flyers of the prehistoric world. Look closely at the cliffside. The ledges are alive with quiet, rhythmic motion. Nestled against the soft stone, thousands of these magnificent creatures sit resting in the breeze. Their long, light bodies are covered in a dense, soft coat of fur-like pycnofibers, insulating them against the damp sea wind. Their wings, composed of tough, flexible membranes supported by an impossibly elongated fourth finger, are neatly folded against their sides like closed sails. Here and there, a parent creature gently adjusts its position on a nest of sun-bleached seaweed, guarding pale eggs that rest in the hollows of the stone. Others preen their wing membranes with light, slender beaks, oiling the delicate skin to keep it supple against the drying sun. A soft, Continuous murmur echoes along the cliff face, a soothing chorus of low, guttural trills, gentle clacks of long beaks, and the soft rustle of leathery wings shifting against the stone. It is the sound of a thriving sanctuary, a place of safety where life has gathered for generations. Perched upon the highest point of the white headland, a grand male sits silhouetted against the wide sky. He is a master of the air, built entirely for the sea wind. His head is crowned with a long, backward sweeping crest of bone, thin and smooth as a feather, acting as both a natural balance and a rudder for his flight. His dark, golden eyes scan the vast water below, watching the subtle shifts in the ripples, reading the subtle patterns of the wind. He feels the warmth of the sun on his back, absorbing the heat that fills his lean muscles with quiet energy. The stone beneath his claws is warm, heated through hours of bright daylight. Down below, the sea glimmers like a field of crushed emeralds and sapphires, shifting from deep turquoise near the shore to a dark, endless indigo at the horizon. A warm thermal updraft begins to form along the face of the chalk cliff. As the sun-baked stone heats the cooler air blowing off the sea, a column of invisible, warm air rises gently upward, pushing softly against the creature's folded wings. He feels it immediately, the subtle lift, the gentle invitation of the sky. Without haste, he shifts his weight forward. He leans slightly toward the edge of the precipice, stretching his long, narrow wings out to their full expanse. As the leather skin catches the rising current, he simply steps off the edge of the stone. There is no violent flapping, no strained effort. He does not fight the air. He surrenders to it. The wind catches him instantly, cradling his lightweight, air-filled skeleton and sweeping him up into the open sky. He glides upward on the gentle spiral of the thermal, rising higher and higher above the white cliffs, above the roaring surf, above the nesting colonies that shrink into tiny specks on the coast below. Up here, the world is vast and utterly silent, save for the whisper of the wind over the leading edges of his wings. The sky stretches out in every direction, an infinite bowl of soft, pale blue, melting into golden light near the setting sun. Below him, the great inland sea stretches out to meet the horizon with no land in sight, its surface rippling like an endless blanket of silk. Joined by dozens of other flyers, he enters a slow, majestic procession. Together, they circle on the thermal currents like dark, elegant shadows drifting across the clouds. They float without effort, leaning gently into the turns, their long crests micro-adjusting to every change in air pressure, their trailing feet steering them through the atmosphere with absolute grace. Below them, deep within the crystal waters of the sea, giant shadows move lazily beneath the surface. Ancient sea turtles with flippers as wide as trees, long-necked plesiosaurs cruising through schools of shimmering silver fish, and massive ammonites floating in the cool depths. But up here, high above the water, the air belongs entirely to the Pteranodons. The sun begins its slow descent toward the distant liquid horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of amber, violet, and soft rose. The white chalk cliffs glow with a warm, peach-colored light, casting long, peaceful shadows across the water. The sea wind slows to a gentle, rocking whisper, pushing the flyer smoothly out across the open ocean, drifting further and further into the quiet dusk, where the sea and sky become one continuous stream of tranquil blue. And as the evening air cools, the flyer tilts a single wingtip, entering a long, slow glide that carries him effortlessly through the twilight, floating forever above the ancient, sleeping sea. Chapter 2: The Crest. When we look back into the deepest reaches of deep time, across tens of millions of years, it is easy to picture the creatures of the past as faded charcoal sketches. Old books and cold stone fossils have conditioned us to see a slate-grey world, monochromatic, drab, and hushed under the weight of rock and time. We imagine vast reptiles painted in dull tones of mud and stone, sliding silently across a shadow-filled earth. But nature has never been a dull artist. Nature is a lover of beauty, of excess, of extravagant color that pulses with the rhythm of life itself. To truly see the Pteranodon, we must erase those gray, stone-tinted images from our minds. We must imagine them as they really were, living, breathing, vibrant inhabitants of an ocean realm bathed in brilliant tropical sunlight. And nowhere did their beauty burn more brightly than in the crown that swept back from the top of their heads, the magnificent, sweeping crest. Rise up again in your mind, drifting high above those gleaming chalk cliffs where the warm ocean wind rustles softly through the evening air. Look closely at the silhouettes resting along the stone ledges, illuminated by the low golden light of the late afternoon sun. What instantly catches the eye, held high against the endless horizon, is not just the sheer spread of their leathery wings, but the striking, sculptural beauty of their skulls. In mature males, the crest was a marvel of biological architecture. Sweeping backward from the top of the skull, this bone structure reached out like a delicate, trailing plume, sometimes extending as long as, or even longer than, the animal's entire narrow beak. Thin as a blade, yet surprisingly strong, it formed a long, dramatic, sweeping curve that balanced the weight of the jaw forward. It was not a heavy spike or an armored weapon. It was a delicate expanse of hollow, light-filled bone, covered in a tight layer of keratin, the very same supple, durable material that forms the beak of a toucan, the horn of an antelope, or the brilliant feathers of a bird of paradise. And like those modern wonders of nature, the crest was a canvas for vibrant, breathing life. For many years, it was assumed that these crests served a purely physical purpose in flight, that they acted merely as a mechanical rudder or a counterbalance to offset the pull of the wind against their long, toothless beaks as they dipped toward the ocean surface. And while the crest certainly caught the thermal updrafts with effortless grace, aiding the subtle micro-adjustments needed to glide for endless miles without a single flap of the wings, its true story was written in light and color. Imagine the crest not as cold, gray bone, but as a living tapestry. Through microscopic canals within the stone fossilized crests, scientists have discovered evidence of dense networks of blood vessels that once flowed just beneath the surface. When the morning sun broke over the eastern sea, warming the flyer's body, those blood vessels flushed with warm life. The soft keratin sheath covering the crest would hum with shifting hues. In the mature males, the crests were likely painted in vivid, arresting patterns: deep coral pinks, fiery ambers, glowing electric blues, and deep crimson ribbons that swept from the tip of the beak to the far crest point. As an individual matured, these colors grew deeper and more luminous, catching the sunlight like stained glass as they banked against the blue sky. No two creatures looked identical. Each crest carried subtle variations in pattern, stripe, and intensity, a visual signature written upon the sky, instantly recognizable to its mate across miles of open air and crowded nesting cliffs. The females, by contrast, carried a soft, quiet elegance of their own. Their crests were much smaller, rounded like a smooth, gentle ridge at the back of the skull, shaped like the crest of a polished helmet or the slope of a river stone. Their coloration was soft, muted, blending seamlessly into the warm chalk and dried seaweed of the cliff ledges, a quiet beauty designed for safety and camouflage, while tending to pale eggs perched high above the crashing waves. As the afternoon sun dips lower, toward the ocean line, casting a warm amber glow across the white chalk cliffs, a young male perched on a high outcrop stretches his long wings against the coastal breeze. He turns his head slowly, catching the golden light along the flat plane of his crest. He tilts his head skyward, snapping his long beak in a rhythmic, clattering call that echoes across the cove. The movement sends a flush of deep, vibrant color sweeping across the keratin surface, a silent, magnificent declaration of strength, health, and vitality aimed at the sky and the sea. In the vast theater of the late Cretaceous, where thousands of flyers gathered along the infinite coastlines of the western interior Seaway, the crest was a language spoken without words. It allowed a soaring creature, floating thousands of feet above the dark turquoise water, to spot another of its kind from miles away, distinguishing age, species, and mood in a single glance against the bright clouds. Think of them not as terrifying monsters of a forgotten world, but as the great oceanic birds of deep time, magnificent, graceful, and brilliantly adorned. They were living artwork created by millions of years of evolution, floating through a warm, sunny world on wings of leather and crowns of light. As the breeze softens into a quiet whisper, carrying the scent of salt air and warm stone, picture the male folding his long, colorful crest low against his neck. The brilliant reds and ambers soften under the cooling twilight air, shifting into quiet tones of deep indigo and soft plum. He settles down into the warmth of the cliff face, tucking his beak beneath a folded wing, safe within the peaceful sanctuary of the colony. High above, the first stars begin to blink through the deep velvet purple of the dusk sky, casting a faint silver shimmer over the calm, sleeping ocean below, where the gentle rhythm of the waves continues its slow, infinite lullaby. Chapter 3: Anatomy of a Glider. To understand how a creature of such immense proportions could float upon the sky with the effortless ease of a drifting leaf, one must look closely at the miracles woven into its very frame. Imagine stepping out of the physical weight of your own body, letting go of the heavy pull of gravity that grounds you to the earth each day, and feeling instead what it is like to be constructed entirely out of air, lightness, and grace. The Pteranodon was not built like the heavy-bodied land animals that walked beneath its shadow. It was a creature born of the sky, sculptured by millions of years of evolution to match the infinite expanse above the sea. Spread wide from tip to delicate tip, its long tapered wings swept across a distance as broad as a small modern glider or a sailing vessel's boom. Yet, despite a presence that could cast a wide, sheltering shadow across the white chalk cliffs. The entire body of this master aviator carried almost no weight at all. If you could hold a sleeping flyer in your arms, you would find it no heavier than a large ocean pelican or a sea eagle resting quietly on the tide. This extraordinary weightlessness was made possible by an architectural marvel hidden deep within its skeleton. The bones of the Pteranodon were not dense or heavy like those of terrestrial mammals. They were hollow, thin-walled, and filled with tiny air-filled chambers. The outer walls of its arm and wing bones were barely thicker than a coin, reinforced internally by delicate, crisscrossing struts of bone that mirrored the elegant lattice of a bridge arch. These hollow spaces were connected directly to the creature's respiratory system, so that as it breathed the soft ocean air, warm currents flowed inside its very skeleton. Its body was quite literally inflated with light air, making its entire frame buoyant, resilient, and perfectly attuned to the atmospheric currents rising off the thermal sea. Everything about the flyer was designed to minimize drag and maximize surface area. Where modern birds rely on heavy flight muscles attached to a deep breastbone to power their flapping flight, the Pteranodon took a completely different path. Its body was compact, light, and streamlined like the hull of a racing boat. It did not rely on continuous, exhausting wing beats to stay aloft across the endless blue expanse. Instead, it was a pure, uncompromising glider, a living counterpart to the modern wanderer of the oceans, the albatross, but scaled to majestic proportions. Consider the wing itself a masterpiece of living engineering. Rather than composed of overlapping feathers, the wing was a vast, flexible membrane of living tissue called the patagium. This membrane stretched from the side of the body all the way down to the tip of an insanely extended fourth finger. While the first three fingers remained small and clawed, capable of gripping the soft chalk ledges during rest, the fourth finger had grown long and slender, sweeping outward like a flexible spar holding open a great silk sail. This was no simple sheet of skin. Deep within the wing membrane lay intricate layers of fine, structural fibers that ran parallel to one another toward the trailing edge. These delicate fibers gave the wing incredible strength, preventing the thin membrane from fluttering wildly in high ocean winds. Microscopic muscles embedded throughout the skin allowed the flyer to adjust the tension of its wings with unfathomable precision. With a tiny, subconscious twitch of a muscle, the Pteranodon could flatten its wing to cut through a sudden headwind or curve the membrane into a deep, lift-generating foil to catch the faintest whisper of a rising thermal draft. Close your eyes for a moment and sink into the sensation of existing inside a frame built for endless flight. Feel how effortless each breath becomes when your chest cavity opens into hollow bones, filling your limbs with warm, buoyant air. Imagine extending your arms out into the cool ocean air and feeling every subtle shift in the wind, not as a force pushing against you, but as a supportive cushion beneath your weight. Up here, thousands of feet above the turquoise waters of the western interior, Seaway, energy is conserved with absolute perfection. There is no strain in the muscles, no tired heaviness in the shoulders. The wide, sweeping wings held outstretched require almost no muscular effort to remain locked in position. Special tendon locks in the joints hold the framework steady against the lift of the wind. The flyer simply rests upon the air, riding the unseen ridges and valleys of the atmosphere as smoothly as a river pebble slides through still water. The air streams silently over the smooth contour of the crest, split cleanly by the sharp, toothless beak. Below, the endless pattern of whitecaps creates a gentle, hypnotic pulse against the blue horizon. The ocean breeze provides everything: the power, the direction, the lift, and the journey. Moving across hundreds of miles of open sea without a single stroke of its wings, the flyer glides onward through the quiet sunlight, suspended in a state of perpetual, weightless rest, carried ever forward across the calm, sleeping world. Chapter 4: Catching Fish on the Wing. There comes a moment in the deep, late hours of the afternoon when the air above the open sea seems to settle into an ancient, unbroken silence. Down below, the high chalk cliffs have faded into a pale, distant line along the edge of the world, melting softly into the blue haze where the sky touches the water. Out here, miles from any shore, there is no land to hold the eye, no solid earth beneath the feet, only the vast, breathing expanse of the western interior Seaway stretching out toward an endless horizon. Imagine descending slowly from the high, thermal currents where you drifted like a cloud, sliding down through the cooling air until you are hovering just above the face of the sea. At wing height, the world transforms into a living, moving landscape of fluid light and shadow. The surface of the water is not a flat mirror, but an endlessly undulating blanket of deep turquoise and glass-clear green. Rolling swells move with a lazy, rhythmic momentum, lifting up in broad, polished hills and sinking into long, shadowed valleys. As the breeze sweeps across the crests of these liquid slopes, it sends fine droplets of cool salt spray airborne, creating a gentle, misty veil that catches the low rays of the setting sun. Down here, the air and the ocean are engaged in a perpetual, silent conversation. The sea breathes its cool, damp moisture upward into the atmosphere, while the wind presses down, sculpting the water into endless patterns of rippling silk. There is a deep, hypnotic rhythm to it all: the slow rise and fall of the swell, the soft whisper of air flowing over the curved, leathery canopy of outstretched wings, and the cool, salt-laced breeze pushing gently against your chest, floating mere inches above the wave crests. The Pteranodon enters its true domain, the long, patient patrol of the open water. Unlike heavy predators that plunge violently into the depths with crashing splashes, the flyer moves across the surface with an astonishing, quiet grace. It makes use of a phenomenon known as ground effect, a cushion of compressed air that forms naturally between the underside of its massive sweeping wings and the flat face of the sea. Resting upon this invisible pillow of air, the flyer can glide for miles without a single stroke of its wings, skimming over the troughs and crests like a shadow drifting across a mirror. Its long, amber-hued crest tilts subtly from side to side, acting as a delicate balance against the shifting air currents close to the water. Its dark, golden eyes scan the emerald depths below, watching through the crystal-clear glass of the sea. It looks for the subtle signs of life hidden just beneath the surface, a sudden disruption in the light, the faint shimmer of a shadow moving against the blue, or the glint of sunlight catching 1,000 tiny scales. For a long time, there is only the peaceful, rhythmic patrol. The swell rises up to meet the wingtip, then falls away softly beneath the tail. The sky overhead shifts into deeper shades of violet and soft apricot, while the water below turns to liquid indigo. The flight is so smooth, so entirely without effort, that it feels less like hunting and more like a quiet, meditative dance with the wind. Then, down in the cool green shadows beneath the swell, a flash of silver breaks the dark expanse. A dense school of prehistoric fish, their scales gleaming like polished coins, surges upward toward the warmth of the surface. They move in a tightly woven cloud, swirling together in a mesmerizing, fluid dance, unaware of the vast, silent shadow gliding through the sky directly above them. With a single, fluid adjustment of its wingtips, the flyer banks into a long, sweeping turn. There is no frantic rush, no tense surge of energy, only a seamless shift in trajectory. The creature lowers its head, aligning its long, toothless beak with the direction of the sea's movement. Its slender body glides downward until the tip of its lower jaw sits just a hair's breadth above the rippling water. With absolute, practiced precision, the flyer dips its lower beak into the surface of the sea. The long, razor-thin jaw cuts through the crest of a rolling wave like a hot blade through wax, sending a thin, silver plume of water spraying out to either side. Deep beneath the lower jaw, a soft, elastic pouch of skin, much like that of a modern pelican, expands instantaneously as it catches the sea. The pouch scoops through the water like a delicate net, creating a smooth, low-drag funnel that gathers the sea and everything resting within it. In an instant, the trap snaps shut. The lower jaw lifts cleanly out of the water, carrying with it a shimmering, wriggling silver prize. The flyer feels no jolt, no violent tug against its momentum. The wing membrane twitches, catching a sudden upward breeze off the face of the wave, effortlessly lifting the creature back into the clear air above the spray. As it rises toward the sky, the elastic pouch contracts, pressing out the trapped seawater through the sides of its beak, while holding the sleek fish securely within. With a gentle, practiced tilt of its long neck, the flyer tosses its head backward toward the sky. The fish flips smoothly in the air, shifting position so that it slides down the long, smooth throat headfirst, the easiest, most effortless path. The creature swallows with a slow, rhythmic movement, feeling the nourishment settle into its lightweight frame, restoring the gentle warmth that fuels its journey across the sky. High above the water once more, the flyer levels its wings and catches the evening wind. The brief moment of action has passed, leaving no trace behind on the face of the ocean. The tiny ripples created by the dip of the beak dissolve back into the broad, rolling expanse of the sea, leaving the water as smooth and unbroken as before. Chapter 5: Colony Life. There is a profound, ancient comfort in belonging to a crowd. As the setting sun casts a long, golden tapestry across the turquoise expanse of the western interior Seaway, the vast solitude of the open sky slowly gives way to the thrumming heart of the coast. For all their solitary grandeur on the thermal updrafts, These masters of the sky are bound by an imperious, primal instinct to return to the stone walls that raised them. They travel miles across empty water, guided by the familiar contours of the coastline, drawn toward a singular, towering haven carved from white chalk. To approach the nesting cliffs from the sea is to witness one of the most overwhelming spectacles of the prehistoric world. Rising hundreds of feet out of the churning surf, the brilliant white stone walls stretch as far as the eye can see, entirely transformed by the sheer density of life clinging to their face. Tens of thousands of Pteranodon have gathered here, covering every flat shelf, every narrow crevice, every tiny outcrop of rock in a living, breathing carpet of folded wings and sweeping crowns. Long before you reach the shore, the sensory tide of the colony rushes out to meet you. The air grows thick with the sharp, salty scent of guano, dried seaweed, and the warm, musky heat of countless bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. The silence of the open ocean shatters into a rich, chaotic symphony, a roaring wall of sound that vibrates through the very air. Thousands of voices interlock in a continuous, deafening chorus. There are deep, reverberating honks, high-pitched clattering of long, toothless beaks, rhythmic, guttural trills, and the dry, papery whisper of leathery wing membranes shifting against the stone. It is an ancient blueprint for survival, a strategy refined by time that echoes through the ages into our modern world. Just as gannets, murres, and albatrosses assemble on perilous sea stacks today, these ancient flyers discovered the absolute security of safety in numbers. On these sheer, vertical chalk faces, inaccessible to large terrestrial predators creeping through the interior forests, a single pair's vulnerability is diluted within the vast collective. The cliff becomes an impenetrable fortress built entirely out of watchful eyes and sharp, defensive beaks. Yet within this sprawling sanctuary, existence is a continuous, delicate dance of negotiation and spatial harmony. On the crowded ledges, every square foot of white chalk is precious territory. A mature male, his vibrant, fire-colored crest gleaming in the ambient light, stands guard over a shallow depression lined with dried kelp and smooth pebbles. His long, four-jointed wings are folded neatly like complex umbrellas against his sides, but his posture remains vigilant. Should a neighbor step even an inch too close to the imaginary boundary of his domain, the response is instantaneous. The territory owner arches his neck, snapping his slender jaw with a loud, hollow clack that sounds like dry wood breaking. He tilts his head to display the full, dazzling profile of his head crest, flushing the blood vessels beneath the thin keratin layer to darken its crimson and yellow hues, a vivid, visual warning spoken in the silent language of color. The intruder, recognizing the challenge, lowers its head, tucks its crest, and sidesteps along the narrow shelf, searching for a vacant patch of stone. High above the crowded ledges, the air is filled with a swirling vortex of flyers returning from the far horizons of the sea. They wheel and bank in tight, elegant patterns, riding the buoyant updrafts forced upward by the cliff face. Here, young males execute breathtaking display flights, sweeping low over the nesting shelves with their wings held in a broad, rigid crescent, turning their heads from side to side so the afternoon light catches their brilliant crests. They call out into the wind, seeking the approval of females resting quietly on the lower terraces, as the sun slowly dips beneath the distant horizon, painting the sky in deep washes of plum, indigo, and soft copper. The frantic energy of the colony begins to ebb. The blinding glare on the chalk walls softens into a gentle, cool, violet glow. One by one, the soaring shadows in the sky drop out of the thermal currents, extending their long, webbed feet and sweeping their wide wings back to catch the air, alighting gracefully upon the stone ledges with a soft rustle of leather. A profound, quiet rhythm takes hold as night settles over the Cretaceous Sea. The deafening wall of sound slowly dissolves into a soft, murmuring hush. Thousands of flyers settle down for the night, tucking their long beaks beneath the warm, insulated shelter of their folded wing membranes. Their lightweight bodies lean into one another for warmth, creating a continuous, slumbering mosaic that covers the white face of the cliff. The loud territorial squabbles fall silent, replaced by the deep, rhythmic, collective breathing of tens of thousands of sleeping creatures. The bright, fiery colors of their crests fade under the gathering darkness, cooling into quiet shades of dark slate and shadow. The giant colony, once a chaotic whirlpool of sound and color, becomes a single peaceful entity resting against the ancient stone. Below the sleeping cliffs, the dark, tide-swollen sea mirrors the starlit canopy of the night sky. The soft, hypnotic hush of the waves washing against the base of the chalk walls acts as an eternal, unbroken lullaby, watching over the sleeping flyers as they dream of the endless wind. Chapter 6. The Cries of the Colony. Close your eyes and let the present moment recede, allowing your consciousness to settle softly upon the edge of the ancient world. You are sitting quietly atop the high, sun-warmed chalk cliffs of the western interior Seaway, cradled by the soft evening air. Below you, the vast, emerald expanse of the sea meets the pale stone walls, but as the light begins its slow amber fade, it is not the sight of the land or the water that fills the senses, it is the sound. A great sea colony is never truly silent. It breathes through sound. To understand the world of Pteranodon, one must listen to the acoustic tapestry woven by tens of thousands of lives sharing the same precipitous ledges. It is a living, shifting soundscape, a vast auditory organism that ebbs and flows like the tides themselves. In the height of the afternoon, the soundscape is a rich, multi-layered roar that carries for miles across the open water. Without syrinx-based vocal cords like modern songbirds, the voices of these ancient aviators are resonant, earthy, and deep, produced by the movement of air through hollow, resonance-amplifying skull structures, throat pouches, and long, keratin-sheathed beaks. Listen closely to the individual threads that compose this monumental chorus. From the high, precarious ledges where young hatchlings nestle in shallow depressions of stone, there rises a delicate, persistent sound, the soft, rhythmic begging calls of the fledglings. It is a rapid, high-pitched clicking, like small river stones tapping together in a gentle current, accompanied by the dry flutter of miniature wing membranes. Whenever a parent returns from the open sea, its shadow gliding across the nest, these tapping calls rise into an urgent, trilling chorus, a plea for the silver fish carried within the parent's expandable gular pouch. Across the flat terraces, where mature adults stand shoulder to shoulder, a different dialogue unfolds. Here, you hear the low, resonant contact calls, a rhythmic, guttural hum that reverberates through the chalk stone itself. It is a sound of reassurance, a constant vocal nod between neighbors packed tightly along the ledges. I am here. This is my space. All is well. Then, punctuating this steady murmur, come the dramatic display vocalizations of the males. A large male, his long, vibrant crest catching the golden light, lifts his beak toward the sky, inflating his throat pouch until the skin stretches tight. He releases a deep, bugle-like sound, a hollow, booming call that resonates through the air like a wooden horn played across water. It is a declaration of presence, a performance that vibrates through his chest and echoes off the surrounding canyon walls, met instantly by answering calls from rivals up and down the cliff face. Every so often, a sudden wave of sound surges through the entire colony like a gust of wind through a forest. A shadow glides too close to the upper cliffs, perhaps a giant predatory marine reptile surfacing in the shallows below, or a larger flyer descending too quickly into a crowded sector. In an instant, a sharp, metallic alarm call rises from the edge of the terrace. It is a harsh, explosive crackle, like dry bamboo splitting underfoot. Within seconds, the sound cascades across the entire cliff face. Thousands of heads snap upward in unison, beaks clattering in a rapid defensive rhythm that sounds like a sudden downpour of rain on dry leaves. 1,000 wings unfold simultaneously, producing a deep, thundering whoosh of air that rattles the dust on the ledges. For a few breathless moments, the acoustic landscape reaches a fever pitch, a roaring wall of alarms, snapping jaws, and beating wind. And then, as the perceived threat dissolves back into the blue expanse, the wave recedes. The sharp alarm calls soften into lower, indignant grunts. The clattering beaks slow down, returning to their rhythmic tapping. Wings are folded back against lightweight bodies with soft, papery rustles. The great living entity of the colony settles back into its baseline rhythm, a slow, collective exhale that rolls down the face of the chalk. As the sun continues its slow, majestic descent beneath the western horizon, a profound transformation begins to sweep over the soundscape. The fiery oranges and pinks of twilight fade into deep shades of violet and midnight blue. The air grows cool and dense, carrying the damp, sweet scent of sea spray and evening mist. One by one, the individual calls begin to drop away. The hungry hatchlings, fed and sheltered beneath the warm, pycnofiber-coated wings of their parents, quiet their tapping cries. They nestle deep into the warm hollows of the stone, their soft breathing blending into the night. The territorial males cease their hollow bugling, tucking their long, vibrant crests low against their backs. The sharp, sudden disputes over nesting space fade into rare, sleepy grunts that grow softer and further apart. The monumental chorus that once dominated the coastline slowly dissolves, layer by layer, until only a gentle rhythmic hum remains, a soft, collective sigh of tens of thousands of sleeping creatures resting together upon the ancient stone. Now, in the deepening quiet of the night, the primary voice of the coast returns to the ocean. With the calls of the colony hushed, you can hear the eternal conversation between the air and the shore. The tide rises slowly, its long, smooth swells rolling in from the dark, infinite expanse of the Seaway. Each wave sweeps up against the foot of the chalk cliffs with a deep, soothing hush, lingering for a moment as white foam cascades over the rocks, before sliding softly back into the deep with a gentle, pebbled whisper. A cool offshore breeze sweeps down from the high plains, rustling softly through the dried seaweed along the ledges, carrying the quiet, peaceful air out toward the open water. High above, the stars emerge in their brilliant, unpolluted thousands, casting a pale silver glow over the silent, sleeping cliffs and the wide, dark ocean stretching out into the peaceful night. Every creature rests now, suspended in the quiet sanctuary of the coast, held safely between the firm, timeless stone beneath them and the vast, tranquil sky above. Chapter 7: Courtship and Display. As the golden afternoon sun lingers low over the western interior Seaway, the heavy heat of the day softens into a gentle, honeyed light. The white chalk cliffs glow with a warm peach hue, casting long, peaceful shadows across the turquoise water below. Up on the high ledges, among the thousands slumbering and preening silhouettes of the colony, a different kind of energy begins to stir, a subtle, electric current born not of survival or hunting, but of connection. For a species that lives upon the open air, the sky is more than just a highway across the ocean. It is a stage, a canvas upon which the stories of life, partnership, and generation are written in graceful, sweeping lines. High above the cliff face, where the warm thermals rise off the sun-baked stone, a male Pteranodon steps off his rocky perch and surrenders to the air. He does not fly to hunt, nor does he fly to travel. He climbs high into the clear blue expanse to display the full, magnificent peak of his vital strength. As he catches a powerful updraft, he extends his immense, leather-like wings to their fullest reach. The sunlight strikes his crown, illuminating the backward sweeping crest that extends far behind his head. Flushed with warm blood, the thin layer of keratin covering the bone glows like stained glass, a brilliant, electric tapestry of deep coral pinks, fiery ambers, and subtle streaks of indigo. He tilts his head slowly from side to side in mid-glide, ensuring that every creature perched along the chalk walls below can see the luminous brilliance of his crown. He begins his courtship dance upon the wind. With masterly control, he banks sharply into a tight, rising spiral, holding one wingtip almost motionless, while the other carves a wide arc through the atmosphere. He dives toward the shimmering sea, picking up silent speed, dropping until he is skimming mere inches above the turquoise waves. At the very last second, with effortless precision, he pulls upward, converting his momentum into a towering climb that carries him hundreds of feet back into the golden light. It is a display of sheer mastery over the invisible currents, a demonstration that he understands the wind so intimately he can navigate any storm the ocean might throw at them in the season ahead. On a quiet, high terrace carved into the face of the white cliff, a female sits watching his flight. Her own crest is smaller and smoothly rounded, a dark, elegant crown that blends softly into the stone. Her dark, gold-ringed eyes follow his sweeping arcs against the sky, registering every subtle shift in his balance, every flash of color along his crest. After a long, soaring descent that loops low over the water, the male turns back toward the cliff face. He adjusts the trailing edges of his wing membranes, slowing his speed until he hovers just above her chosen ledge. With a soft, papery rustle of folding wings, he lights upon the chalk stone a few feet away, dropping lightly to all fours. The moment of encounter is delicate, filled with a quiet, ancient tension. The male lowers his head slightly, tucking his long beak close to his chest to signal peaceful intent. He does not rush forward or crowd her space. Instead, he begins a slow, rhythmic sway of his long neck, tilting his crest so that the last low rays of the setting sun catch its vivid crimson edge. He releases a low, rhythmic, guttural trill, a gentle, vibrating hum that resonates through the solid stone beneath their claws. For a long moment, the female remains still, testing the air, reading the quiet cadence of his presence. Then she makes her reply. She steps forward, narrowing the distance between them. She tilts her head upward and responds with a soft, matching clack of her beak, a gentle, rhythmic tapping that breaks the tension like spring rain falling on dry leaves. She extends her slender neck, leaning close until the tip of her beak gently brushes against the side of his long, vibrant crest. It is a subtle, the profound gesture of acceptance, the sealing of a bond between two creatures who will share the arduous work of the coming months. Together, they will defend this narrow shelf of stone, gather dried seaweed from the tides, and take turns guarding their pale eggs against the ocean winds. As the sun finally touches the rim of the western horizon, spilling a path of liquid gold across the quiet sea, the newly bonded pair stands side by side on their high, sheltered ledge. The violent, fiery oranges of the sunset slowly melt into deep, soothing washes of plum, violet, and dark slate blue. The male folds his great, light-filled wings neatly against his sides, leaning his lightweight frame slightly toward her for warmth. The brilliant colors of his crest begin to soften under the cooling evening air, fading from bright flame to a deep, peaceful mahogany. The female nestles into the hollow of the stone beside him, resting her head against his shoulder as the cool ocean breeze sweeps up the face of the cliff. High above the vast, sleeping Seaway, they rest together in the quiet sanctuary of the stone, two souls united against the vastness of the sky and the endless tide, lulled to sleep by the timeless rhythm of the waves crashing softly below. Chapter 8. Raising the Young. There is an unbearable tenderness in the way a creature built for the open, violent sky cradles a fragile promise of life. High above the ceaseless thrum of the turquoise sea, where the white chalk cliffs catch the soft, golden breath of the morning air, the work of generation begins not with grand oceanic flights, but in quiet, motionless devotion. On a narrow terrace sheltered from the harshest coastal gusts, the bonded pair has crafted a humble sanctuary. Unlike modern woodland birds that weave elaborate baskets of twigs, the Pteranodon requires only a shallow hollow in the soft stone, lined with dried amber kelp, sun-bleached seagrass, and smooth river pebbles carried up from the distant river mouths. Here, resting safe upon the sun-baked stone, lies a single, pale egg. Unlike the hard, brittle shells of modern birds, the egg of a Pteranodon was soft and leathery, much like the eggs of modern sea turtles and reptiles. It required constant care not merely to keep it warm against the damp ocean mist, but to protect its delicate, permeable membrane from drying out under the scorching Cretaceous sun. For weeks, the parents share this quiet duty with seamless harmony. While one sweeps out across the open sea to glide low over the wave crests in search of silver fish, the other sits motionless upon the nest. The incubating parent folds its broad, leathery wings snugly around its body, forming a soft, insulated canopy over the hollow. The warmth of its body, fueled by a high metabolic engine and insulated by a dense coat of downy pycnofibers, transfers gently into the leathery shell beneath. They rotate their shifts with quiet precision. As the hunting partner returns from the horizon, its shadow gliding across the white chalk, it lights upon the ledge with a soft, familiar clack of its toothless beak. The resting parent shifts gently, stretching its long limbs, and nudges the egg with a delicate, affectionate touch before taking to the sky. Then comes the quiet morning, when the leathery shell begins to stir. Deep within the egg, a tiny life presses against the flexible walls. Unlike many modern birds that emerge blind, naked, and helpless, the young pterosaur, known in paleontology as a flapling, is born with a remarkable ancient resilience. Paleontologists call this superprecociality, a biological miracle where a creature enters the world already equipped with the fundamental tools for survival. With a final, desperate push, the tiny flapling splits the leathery membrane and tumbles out onto the sun-warmed stone. It is a miniature marvel of biological design. Though no larger than a small seabird, its body is already a fully formed miniature of its parents. Its hollow bones are light and sturdy, its small body covered in a fine coat of soft, velvety down, and most astonishingly of all, its wing membranes are already formed, stretched neatly along an elongated fourth finger. From the very moment it draws its first breath of salt air, its body is pre-programmed for the sky. Yet despite its innate independence, the world outside the egg is vast, overwhelming, and cold. The tiny flapling shivers as the damp sea wind brushes over the ledge, looking up with wide, dark eyes at the towering forms of its parents. With a soft, low gurgle, the mother steps forward. She lowers her long, elegant neck and tucks the wet, shivering flapling beneath the wide, sheltering folds of her wing. Beneath that dark, warm canopy, shielded completely from the wind and the deafening roar of the colony, the young creature finds its first true peace. It rests against the warm, beating chest of its parent, listening to the steady, rhythmic pulse of life that will guide its early days. In those first few weeks, the ledge becomes a world unto itself. The growth of a flapling is extraordinarily rapid, fueled by a constant stream of high-protein nourishment brought home from the sea. When the hunting parent returns, the flapling taps its tiny beak against the base of the parent's throat pouch. In response, the adult gently regurgitates a rich, partially digested paste of oily fish, rich in nutrients and moisture. The young animal eats greedily, its body drinking in the energy needed to build dense flight muscle and expand its hollow skeleton. As the days turn into weeks, the flapling spends hours on the edge of the terrace, watching the adult flyers with quiet fascination. It stretches its growing wings into the coastal breeze, feeling the invisible lift of the air beneath the leathery skin for the very first time. It twitches its tiny wing muscles, adjusting the tension of the membrane just as it saw its mother do, learning the subtle language of the wind before its feet have ever left the stone. The atmosphere on the cliff face is a constant classroom. The flapling observes how the thermal currents rise off the sun-baked chalk, how the older flyers angle their wings to climb without flapping, and how they turn their heads to use their crests as delicate rudders against the crosswinds. Flight for a pteranodon is not merely a physical act. It is an instinct woven deep into their nerve fibers, waiting for the precise moment to be unleashed. And then comes the day that every creature of the cliffs must face, the day of the first launch. The young pteranodon stands at the very precipice of the white chalk cliff. Below its feet, the stone drops away into a dizzying vertical fall, ending hundreds of feet below in the churning turquoise waters of the sea. The roar of the surf echoes up the cliff face, carrying with it the cool spray of the ocean. To an animal that has known only the safety of the flat stone ledge, the abyss below is terrifyingly vast. Its parents do not push or force the young flyer. They stand a short distance away on the ledge, quietly preening their wing membranes, offering a calm, reassuring presence. The choice belongs entirely to the young life standing on the brink. The wind off the sea is strong today, a firm, steady updraft lifting off the face of the chalk. It pushes up against the underside of the flapling's outstretched wings, teasing its lightweight frame, tugging gently at its claws. The young creature shifts its weight back and forth, feeling the buoyant tension building beneath its sails. It looks out toward the horizon, where the sky meets the endless blue water in a seamless line of light. It takes a deep breath of the salt-laden air. It crouches low, coiling the muscles in its hind legs and folded arms, and then, with a single, courageous leap, it pushes off from the edge of the stone. For one breathless, terrifying second, gravity claims the young flyer. It drops like a stone into the empty air, falling past the jagged ledges, past the nesting colonies, down toward the dark, churning water below. The sea rushes up to meet it, wild and cold. In the history of the cliffs, not every leap ended in triumph. Some young flyers hesitated, failed to open their wings in time, or were caught by an unpredictable downdraft, falling into the white foam where the marine predators waited. But evolution had honed this moment over millions of years, crafting a brain and body that knew the air before ever touching it. Just as the waves seem dangerously close, the flapling's instincts snap into place. It extends its long, slender fourth fingers outward, snapping the leathery wing membranes taut against the wind. It turns its tiny head, adjusting the angle of its neck and crest to catch the rising current. Instantly, the air responds. The downward plunge halts with a smooth, miraculous cushion of lift. The invisible thermal current rising off the chalk cliff catches the outstretched wings, scooping the tiny flyer up out of the drop. The young pteranodon does not fall. It floats. It rises slowly, effortlessly back up the face of the cliff, swept upward on a column of warm, sun-baked air. The terrifying abyss transforms in a single heartbeat into an open, weightless paradise. The sea below is no longer a threat, but a breathtaking blanket of emerald and sapphire light, stretching out to the edges of the world. A soft, triumphant trill escapes the young flyer's throat as it banks gently into its very first turn. It moves its wingtips with subconscious grace, leaning into the curve of the wind, rising higher and higher above the ledges where it was born. Up here, beside its parents who have swept out to join it in the sky, the young Pteranodon is no longer a creature of the stone. It has become what it was always meant to be, a master of the wind, a child of the open air, floating weightlessly above the ancient, sleeping sea. The sun begins its slow, peaceful decline, casting a long path of liquid rose and amber across the water. The young flyer glides beside its mother, their wingtips almost touching in the quiet twilight air, drifting together on the endless currents as the world settles down into a deep, unbroken rest. Chapter 9: Storms at Sea. There are moments when the gentle nature of the ancient sea gives way to something vast, dark, and unimaginably powerful. Across the shimmering, infinite expanse of the western interior Seaway, the afternoon calm does not always fade quietly into a peaceful twilight. Sometimes, far out over the warm southern Gulf where the tropics meet the northern air, the sky begins to bruise. It starts with a subtle shift in the air pressure, a heavy, silent drop that ripples through the atmosphere long before a single cloud is seen. On the high, white chalk cliffs, the colony senses it first. The gentle, rhythmic chatter of thousands of roosting flyers begins to quiet down, replaced by a restless, low vibration. The air turns thick and cool, smelling intensely of crushed stone, deep ocean, and electricity. Off on the horizon, the brilliant sapphire sky transforms into a bruised shade of charcoal and slate blue as massive towers of storm clouds build upwards, swallowing the sun and casting a long, ink-black shadow across the water. When the storm front rolls over the coastline, it unleashes a gale of colossal proportions. Driving rain sweeps across the chalk walls in dense, blinding sheets, washing over the nesting ledges and stinging the skin like fine sand. The ocean below, usually a calm blanket of turquoise swells, turns into a violent, churning cauldron of ink and churning white foam. Monstrous waves crash against the foot of the cliffs, sending towers of cold spray high into the air, soaking the lower ledges. Yet, on the precipitous face of the white cliffs, the colony demonstrates a quiet, collective resilience. Packed shoulder to shoulder, thousands of pteranodons press their bodies tightly against the solid stone. They fold their great, leathery wings flush against their flanks, tucking their long, narrow heads and swept-back crests beneath the warm, water-resistant coats of pycnofibers of their neighbors. They lock their curved claws deep into the micro-fissures of the chalk, anchoring themselves against the howling gale. Together, they form a living, overlapping armor of folded leather and downy fur, sharing body heat, enduring the driving rain in absolute, patient silence while the world rages around them. But out over the open ocean, far beyond the reach of the sheltered cliffs, a solitary flyer finds itself caught in the very heart of the tempests. For a creature built entirely of hollow bones and light skin sails, a storm at sea might seem like absolute destruction. Yet in the deep, unwritten memory locked within its frame, a gale is not merely a threat, it is an incredible, terrifying opportunity. To an animal that lives upon the wind, the violent updrafts of a squall carry the power to lift it beyond the reach of the waves, propelling it across vast distances that would otherwise take days of calm gliding to cross. High above the black, churning water, surrounded by the deafening roar of wind and rain, the traveler rides the razor edge of the storm system. The sky above is a swirling vault of dark indigo, broken only by the cold, silent flashes of lightning illuminating the clouds from within. Below, the sea is an endless expanse of towering, liquid mountains, their crests blown into long, trailing plumes of white sea foam. The wind does not blow in a steady stream here. It slams into the flyer in violent, erratic surges, threatening to twist its long, delicate wing finger or toss it violently down into the crashing sea. Yet the Pteranodon does not panic, nor does it fight the gale with desperate, tiring effort. It surrenders its weight entirely to the gale, relying on the ancient, subconscious wisdom locked in its nervous system. With breathtaking precision, the flyer micro-adjusts the tension of its wing membranes. Microscopic muscles embedded within the living leather twitch and shift, tightening the skin to cut through a sudden headwind, or curving the wingtips to catch an enormous, rising draft of warm air pushed upward by the storm front. Its long, backward sweeping crest acts as a stabilizing keel, trimming its heading in the violent crosswinds, holding its long beak steady as it glides through the driving rain. It banks sharply into the face of a rising gale, using the sheer kinetic energy of the storm to climb thousands of feet into the atmosphere in a single, effortless sweep. It floats on the outer edge of the wall cloud, riding the giant waves of air like a seabird sliding down a swell. The driving rain sheets off its sleek, oiled beak and aerodynamic skull, cold ocean spray washing its skin clean as it cuts through the dark gloom. In this wild, roaring space between the black sky and the white-capped water, the flyer experiences a state of pure, weightless freedom. It is suspended in a realm where Earth does not exist, moving effortlessly at incredible speeds, carried across hundreds of miles of open water on the back of the tempest. The storm, for all its fury, becomes its engine, its path, and its companion through the deep night. Gradually, as the long hours pass, the violent energy of the storm begins to spend itself out across the vast ocean expanse. The howling wind softens into a steady, rhythmic blow. The dense, dark clouds break apart into scattered, drifting fragments. Through the tears in the storm veil, the cool, silver light of a calm moon spills down, illuminating the smooth, rolling surface of the sea below. The flyer levels its broad wings, catching a smooth, cool breeze off the clearing water. The cold rain gives way to a soft, sea-scented mist, sparkling under the pale moonlight. Safe, unscathed, and carried far across the seaway by the ancient power of the sky, the great bird of the Cretaceous glides peacefully into the calm, quiet air of the trailing night, floating weightlessly beneath the clearing stars. Chapter 10: Migration along the coast. There is a deep, ancient rhythm to the living world that moves not by the ticking of clocks, but by the slow, majestic turning of the earth itself. Across the infinite expanse of the western interior Seaway, as the high summer sun begins its long, subtle slide into autumn, the air over the water carries a new, crisp, whispering edge. The warm surface currents that once brought endless schools of silver fish into the shallow coves begin to shift, moving silently south toward the warmer tropical Gulf. And with that invisible ocean current, a quiet restlessness stirs along the white chalk cliffs. It begins not with a sudden panic, but with a shared, unspoken knowing woven into the marrow of their hollow bones. The young, now fully fledged and strong of wing, spend their afternoons riding the high thermals, testing the broad, leathery expanse of their sails against the changing coastal winds. The older flyers, their vivid crests slightly muted under the late season sun, turn their long beaks toward the southern horizon, reading the subtle shifts in humidity, temperature, and magnetic lines that cross the open water. Then comes the morning when the colony takes to the sky, not to hunt, but to journey. One by one, and then by the thousands, the Pteranodons step off their familiar white ledges and surrender to the southbound winds. They assemble into magnificent, endless columns that stretch for miles along the winding perimeter of the ancient continent. Like great, dark ribbons of silk floating across a sky of liquid gold, they move in slow, synchronized grace. There is no hurried, chaotic flapping. They align themselves into long V formations and sweeping processions, taking full advantage of the drafting currents created by the wingtips of those flying ahead. Below them, the shifting geography of the Cretaceous coastline unfolds like a continuous, living map. They follow timeless natural landmarks carved by eons of wind and water, massive red sandstone arches rising out of the turquoise surf, long chains of barrier islands draped in lush, cypress-studded wetlands, and broad river deltas where muddy freshwater blooms like dark ink into the crystal-clear ocean. These visual anchors guide the elder travelers who have carved this exact path through the air dozens of times before, passing down the ancient route to the young gliding silently by their sides. As the journey stretches over days and weeks, the great procession moves with the quiet discipline of the sea itself. When the afternoon light softens into deep shades of plum and amber, the column descends towards secluded, pristine resting grounds. They do not seek the crowded, noisy chalk cliffs of their home nesting sites, but wide, uninhabited sweeps of pale sandy beach, sheltered lagoons, and isolated sea stacks carved by the tide. Here, on these quiet, sun-baked shores, thousands of flyers alight with a soft, collective rustle of folding leather sails. They gather along the water's edge, drinking the cool, fresh water dripping from coastal springs, preening their wing membranes, and resting their lightweight frames upon the soft sand. The younger travelers nestle against the warm bodies of the adults, listening to the gentle rhythmic lap of the quiet shore waters, recovering the quiet energy needed for the next leg of their journey. Throughout the long migration, the sea remains their faithful provider, skimming low over the coastal waters as they move south, The flyers follow the vast, migrating clouds of prehistoric herring and shimmering needlefish. In the quiet morning calm, when the water turns to glass, a single flyer will drop out of the column, dipping its long, flexible jaw pouch beneath the surface in a fluid, practiced scoop, rising effortlessly back into the procession without missing a single beat of the wind. For months, this nomadic existence defines their lives, moving seamlessly between sky and shore, riding the seasonal breath of the planet down to the warm, food-rich waters of the south, where they winter under gentle skies and balmy ocean breezes. Yet, just as an invisible string pulled them south when the air grew cold, another deeper, more insistent whisper begins to echo through their blood as the seasons turn. The sun climbs higher into the spring sky, warming the northern waters, calling the schools of fish back to the vast chalk bays. The return journey begins under the bright, hopeful light of early spring. The columns reform, sweeping north along the familiar coastline, driven by a profound, magnetic home hunger that transforms their flight into an eager, steady march across the sky. Then comes the quiet, breathtaking late afternoon when the familiar coast finally emerges out of the sea mist. High on the horizon, glowing with a soft, radiant white under the golden rays of the setting sun, stand the familiar chalk cliffs. They rise out of the turquoise surf like an old eternal sanctuary, unchanged by the months of absence. As the procession draws near, the crisp air carries the unmistakable, deeply comforting scent of home, the sharp, rich tang of sea salt, the earthy musk of the nesting ledges, and the sun-warmed limestone that held them through so many seasons. A great, collective murmur rolls through the returning flock. The flyers break out of their long formations, banking into wide, joyous spirals above the roaring surf. They catch the familiar thermal updrafts rising off the sun-baked stone, floating effortlessly back toward the very ledges where they were born, one by one, with a soft, papery sweep of folding wings and the delicate, reassuring clack of claws against familiar rock. The travelers settle home. The male folds his long, colorful crest low against his neck. The female nestles into her sheltered terrace, tucking her beak into her wing. The roar of the colony rises once more around them, a rich, ancient symphony blending with the rhythmic hush, hush, hush of the sea washing against the base of the cliff. Safe within the timeless embrace of the white stone, surrounded by the family of the wind, the travelers rest at last, lulled into a deep, unbroken slumber by the eternal voice of their ocean home. Chapter 11. Predators from Below. To float upon the sky is to know a pure and weightless liberty, but to feed upon the sea is to dance along the razor's edge of a dark, unpredictable world. High above the turquoise expanse of the western interior Seaway, the air is a realm of absolute safety, an endless blue sanctuary where the wind cradles every feather-light bone. Yet beneath that glittering, sunlit skin of water lies an abyss of cold twilight shadows, where ancient monsters move with terrifying, silent grace. When the Pteranodon descends from the high thermals to hunt, it leaves the tranquil heights behind and enters a place of quiet, electric tension. At wing height, skimming mere inches above the gentle swell, The ocean is no longer just a peaceful blanket of liquid jewel tones. It is a vast, opaque mirror, masking a world of relentless power. The flyer knows this truth not through fear as we understand it, but through a deep, instinctive vigilance written into the very marrow of its frame. Every quick dip of the lower jaw, every low glide over a school of silver fish is a calculated gamble made between the sky and the sea. Down in the dark, sunless depths, hundreds of feet below the sparkling surface, a shadow moves. It belongs to a mosasaur, the undisputed titan of the Cretaceous oceans. Spanning 40 feet from its massive armored skull to the broad, eel-like fluke of its powerful tail, this marine giant is built for explosive speed. Its dark, counter-shaded hide renders it virtually invisible from above, blending seamlessly into the ink-black depths of the seafloor. It does not chase its prey across vast distances of open water. It waits, drifting lazily in the cold currents, its pale, golden eyes fixed on the distant ceiling of light far above. To the mosasaur, the shimmering surface of the sea is a stage where shadows pass. It reads the subtle disruptions in the overhead light, the silver cloud of a fish school, the drift of a floating log, and the low, elegant silhouette of broad wings skimming through the air. It senses the rhythmic vibrations of a slender beak breaking the water, a tiny ripple radiating through the ocean skin that signals a moment of vulnerability. Above, the Pteranodon remains locked in the serene rhythm of its hunt. The late afternoon light paints the gentle waves in shades of melted gold and soft violet. The flyer glides on a cushion of air, its long, amber-hued crest tilted to balance against the coastal breeze. Seeing a flash of silver scale just beneath the crest of a rolling wave, the creature banks smoothly, lowering its long, toothless jaw to scoop the sea. In that single, quiet moment, as the razor-thin jaw cuts through the crest of the wave, the shadow in the deep begins its terrifying ascent. With a single, colossal stroke of its muscular tail, the mosasaur accelerates upward through the water column. It moves with astonishing, quiet fury, a missile of bone, muscle, and scale rising out of the cold darkness. The water compresses against its massive snout as it climbs, targeting the tiny, sunlit shadow hovering at the boundary of its world. 100 feet below, then 50, then 20, the Pteranodon, lifting its head from the wave with a wriggling fish secured within its elastic throat pouch, catches no sound, for the sea keeps its secrets silent. But it feels a sudden, unnatural shift in the water beneath its belly. The smooth, rolling surface bulges strangely upward. The glass-clear turquoise darkens into a dense, solid mass in a fraction of a second. The ancient instincts of the sky snap awake with electric clarity. Without hesitation, the flyer coils its flight muscles and snaps its great leathery wings taut, thrusting down against the cushion of air with every ounce of power in its frame. An instant later, the ocean surface explodes. A roaring tower of white foam, shattered spray, and dark, glistening scales erupts into the sky, directly beneath the flyer's tail. The massive, conical snout of the mosasaur breaks cleanly through the surface, its cavernous jaws snapping shut with a hollow, thunderous crack that sounds like a lightning strike across the water. Rows of backward curving, dagger-like teeth clash together in the empty air, mere inches from the trailing feet of the Pteranodon. The violent displacement of air and water slams into the flyer like a physical wall. The creature flinches upward, thrown sideways by the sudden, churning tempest. Its long wingtip brushes the cold, salty spray of the monster's wake, but the air, faithful and forgiving, holds firm beneath its sails. The Pteranodon angles its crest sharply into the blast, beating its broad wings with urgent, powerful strokes, converting its terror into a soaring, vertical climb. For a terrifying, suspended second, the giant sea lizard hangs motionless in the bright, unfamiliar air. Sunlight glints off its wet, dark scales and the pale pink interior of its gaping maw, a creature of the deep shadow briefly trespassing in the realm of light. Then, gravity claims the titan. With a deafening, cascading splash that echoes across miles of open ocean, the mosasaur crashes back down into the waves, disappearing beneath a swirling vortex of white foam and churning turquoise depths, sinking silently back toward the dark abyss from which it came. High above the chaotic ring of foam, the Pteranodon continues its rapid, spiraling ascent. Up, up, and up it climbs, drawing deep, steady breaths of the cool, clean salt air. The violent roar of the water fades behind it, replaced once more by the soft, reassuring whisper of the wind passing over its long, sweeping wings. At 2,000 feet, the flyer levels out into a slow, majestic glide. The water below has smoothed back down, its momentarily shattered mirror restored to an unbroken expanse of calm, shifting sapphire. The giant shadow beneath the surface has vanished into the deep blue haze, leaving no trace of the violence that almost claimed a life. The Pteranodon turns its crest toward the golden sky, rising higher still into the safe, buoyant thermals. The sea below is vast, beautiful and wild, but it remains a realm to be visited only for a fleeting breath. Up here, in the quiet, weightless infinity of the atmosphere, the flyer belongs entirely to the air safe, untouched and floating peacefully above the sleeping world. Chapter 12. Silence on the Cliffs. Imagine standing beneath a wide, open sky, where the wind moves across the land in a single, continuous sigh. The earth here is flat and vast, stretching out to meet a horizon that feels almost infinite, softened only by the gentle ripples of high grass bending under the sun. It is a quiet place, wrapped in a deep stillness that feels as old as time itself. But if you look closely at the ground beneath your feet, where the green prairie gives way to weathered mounds of dusty stone, you will see the ghostly white of ancient chalk. These are the monument rocks of Kansas, towering sun-bleached spires and chalk bluffs, standing silently in the middle of a landlocked plain. Hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean, bathed in the dry, quiet heat of the American heartland, these stones feel completely divorced from the sea. Yet every grain of this soft, white rock was born beneath the waves. Millions of years ago, this very soil was the floor of the great western interior Seaway, and these quiet bluffs were the soaring, wind-swept sea cliffs where tens of thousands of lives once gathered. If you close your eyes and let the quiet weight of the afternoon settle over you, the boundaries of time begin to soften and blur. The dry rustle of the prairie grass, slowly transforms into the rhythmic, hypnotic wash of ocean swells, dissolving into white foam against the base of the stone. The hot, landlocked breeze shifts, carrying with it the cold, sharp tang of sea salt, the rich scent of damp kelp, and the cool moisture of a rising tide. Look up into the empty blue above the bluffs, and let the memory of the sky fill the void. Where there is now only the vast, silent air, imagine the sweeping, elegant silhouettes of the great flyers returning home. Picture them drifting down on the thermal updrafts, their massive, leather-like sails catching the low, golden light of the late afternoon sun. Their long, vibrant crests painted in glowing ambers, fiery corals, and deep crimson gleam like crowns against the clouds as they bank into gentle, spiraling turns. Feel the vibrant energy that once pulsed through these very rocks. The sheer white ledges, now empty and silent under the sun, were once a living mosaic of folded wings and warm, resting bodies. Thousands of voices once echoed across these canyon walls, a rich, complex symphony of resonant calls, the soft tapping of young hatchlings begging for food, and the hollow, rhythmic clatter of long beaks signaling peace to neighboring nests. For millions of years, this coast was a sacred sanctuary of life, an unbroken circle of courtship, birth, migration, and sleep, held safely between the timeless stone and the endless sea. Then, slowly, softly, let the memory ebb away, like the tide receding into the dark expanse of the deep ocean. The great Seaway drained away, century by century, as the continent rose and the world transformed. The water vanished into the sky and the poles, leaving behind only the vast, quiet plains and the sun-bleached chalk bluffs to guard the memory of what once was. The vibrant colors of the crests faded into the dark earth. The loud, majestic chorus of the colony fell silent, and the great wings that once owned the sky folded one last time, resting forever within the warm, protective embrace of the stone. Today, if you walk along the quiet chalk formations of Kansas, you can still find the subtle, delicate impressions left behind. Imprinted deep within the soft layers of rock are the petrified shadows of that forgotten world, the delicate, hollow arm bones light as air, the long, sweeping outline of a crest, and the faint, unmistakable weave of a wing membrane preserved in stone. The rock holds them gently, cradling the physical memory of a magnificent creature that once floated weightlessly above a lost ocean. The sea is long gone, the cliffs stand dry and empty, and the great flyers have passed into the quiet sanctuary of deep time. Yet above the ancient, sleeping stone, the wind continues to blow. It is the very same wind that once lifted broad, leathery sails off the high ledges, the same wind that carried giant gliders across thousands of miles of open water, and the same wind that cradled a young life taking its very first leap into the blue. The wind sweeps across the open prairie tonight, cold, gentle, and eternal, flowing over the silent chalk bluffs without knowing what it once carried, singing a soft, unbroken lullaby over a world now peacefully at rest.